This is tutorial 11.7 from your book, and it's the same product queries, except they've now added some calculations where they could do average price of all. So if I click on average price of all, it gives me the average price of all the items, and I click OK, and it still has the other queries built in. So what they did in order to create this, if we exit out of that, same thing, they would have went into product XSD, double click on it, and then that brings up the window that allows you to work with the SQL, and they would have created a new query. So if we go in here, right click, add a query is what we would have done using a SQL statement. Say next, select which returns rows, and I'm going to say, well actually I'm going to back up on this one just a little bit. The return by rows would be the get data, the fill by price, and the fill by units, but average price is a little bit different. Average price would be one where you're actually going to do some calculations, and so I'm going to step back and see if we can figure this out. In your textbook on page 704, it tells us that we want to do a select statement which returns a single value instead of returning rows is going to be the option. And then when they click next is where they would have typed in, they want to specify a SQL statement, and this one's going to be, this one says select count from product. You would go ahead and calculate, or they had them type in select replace. I'm going to go ahead and just say select count from product, and that's going to return the count of all products. I'm going to click next. And what would you like to name the function? Well, since it's doing a count, I am going to name it, and it's from products, I think I'll name it product count. So this is very similar to what you're going to be doing in exercise number 5. And so this is a general select statement. To apply these settings, click finish. I click finish. So we have just created product count, and it's going to select the count from the product. I'm not exactly sure what that does, but that's what it's going to do. But we're not done. In order to actually get those to work, we have to do some editing of code in the code window. Okay, and so if we look at the designer, we're going to see on the designer that there isn't a place to put this. We might need a button in order to get the count, and so we might want to add a button here in order to execute that code. So I'm going to create a button, and then we'll look at the code behind the scenes. We added a button count and changed the text. I did not change the name of it. I should have. So that would be our count button. And then I double clicked on it in order to get where we're going to add the code, and I'm going to be stealing what they did for their find average. So we're going to look at their example and see how they kind of set theirs up. And so mine's going to return a count of some sort, so I'm going to make it an integer instead of and we're going to count the products, I decided. And right now the product count is 0. You could assign it 0, but you don't have to, because we're going to then assign it a value. So we're going to count the products. It's going to be assigned, and then in order to work with those methods that we created in the XSD in the SQL, we need to use a table adapter. So I'm just going to count. I don't know if I need to convert or anything, so I'm going to go this dot, and I need the table that I'm working with, so that's product table adapter. Select that, hit enter, dot, and then it brings up all of the methods that I can use that we created in SQL. So I'm going to do product count. That's a method, so it's going to need parens and a semicolon. Now it does not like something, so if I hover over this, it says it cannot implicitly convert type object to int. A explicit conversion exists. Are you missing a cast? So apparently it wants us to cast this as an integer, and I'll be honest, I'm kind of guessing right now. And then we're going to do a message box, and then we're going to show the count. Now, if you remember from our count, I just kind of let the computer kind of pick what it was doing, because I am not adept at SQL. We are going to do here count items, and we will see what we get back, and we will do a count products to string. It doesn't need to be currency because we're not dealing with money, so we're just going to do to string. So I'm really not sure what we're going to get here, but if we go ahead and execute this, we will see what happens, if anything happens, if it doesn't produce an error. When we run it, if I click on count, we'll see what my message box says. Items is 12. So it counted how many items there were, counted each of the rows, and so there are 12. If we count through, I counted them earlier, there are 12 items, so it gave us a count. I was kind of wondering what the asterisk would do in our SQL, meaning, because that's kind of like what we call a wildcard character. So if I go to the SQL and I go to product count and I go to configure the query, please notice that there was an asterisk here. So I kind of wonder what would happen if I said that I want to count, let's see, I've got product numbers. Count how many product numbers I have from product, and see if that would work. I would click next, I would click next, and I would click just finish. And I want to run it again to see if that changes anything. And I believe that we're going to get the same result when we run this. If I click count, it still gives me 12 items. So count asterisk and count product number. So that would be used in case maybe you have different, maybe you don't actually have the same number of items in each column. We need to find how many. It doesn't make sense for this particular application because they all have the same number of rows, etc. But it actually could be used as a error trapping because everything should have the same number of items in each row. If you count each individual column and you find that one column is shorter than another, that's telling you there's a piece of data that's missing. So that could be used to do some troubleshooting. All right, that wraps up tutorial 11-8. And it kind of shows you almost everything that you need to know for your doing number 5. But let's talk through tutorial number, I said that was tutorial 8. It's tutorial 7. I'm sorry. I'm getting really tired. But we'll talk through one more tutorial for those of you that would like that. And then you can go ahead and start working on exercise number 5.